Notre Dame didn't end up getting the path that many fans were hoping for, but in the end, it might end up being a good thing for the Irish as they will take center stage in college football for the first time in a long time. This is Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. And thanks for joining me here on Tuesday, December 10th, and for making this your first listen of the day. Quick reminder to subscribe on your preferred platform. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. For most teams in college football, their attention is on the transfer portal these days because the December window opened up yesterday, and you're already seeing some big moves across the landscape. But those teams aren't in the college football playoff. For Notre Dame, their attention is on the matchup with the Indiana Hoosiers, and I do not expect we will hear anything definitive about who Notre Dame is adding or losing via the portal until after this run is over. So as for today, my old co-host Luke Smith is going to stop by as he does every Tuesday throughout the season to discuss Notre Dame's matchup with the Hoosiers in the first round of the playoff. We predict what the atmosphere is going to be like inside Notre Dame Stadium, how the cold weather could actually favor the Irish, even though the Hoosiers certainly aren't strangers to the winter, plus our thoughts on how the rest of the bracket shook out. Enjoy. All right, Luke, before we dive into the matchup between Notre Dame and Indiana, take me through your thought process as you're watching the conference championship games on Saturday, all the way through the selection show when it was announced that Notre Dame was ranked 5th and seeded 7th. Like, how did you react to everything as it played out?
As I was watching Penn State mount a comeback Saturday night after Texas really just choked away Saturday's SEC championship game to Georgia, I had a strong feeling Notre Dame would likely be behind both of those teams in Penn State and Texas. Now, that doesn't mean that I agreed with it, but I fully expected it to happen. And then as it became clear that the Irish are going to play Indiana, I admittedly wasn't thrilled at first. To me, this seemed like a situation where Indiana had nothing to lose and Notre Dame had nothing to gain. Indiana, I believe, is the second worst college football program in the entire Power Four. If you look at it historically, they definitely, when they played Northwestern earlier this year, it was the battle to determine who would be the worst. So maybe the 6 or 7 wins they've had since then have changed that, but I doubt it. A solid chunk of IU alums I know never went to a single football game. I mean, heck, some of them even root for the Irish in football. So it's been frustrating because this fall they have come out of the woodwork as they've had this dream season. And so I wasn't thrilled about that, just knowing how annoying that fan base, quote unquote, was going to be the next several weeks. However, I've kind of gotten over that in the last 24 hours. And now looking at it as a great opportunity for Notre Dame to win a playoff game and move on to the next round. But that was sort of the gamut of emotions as things happened and I was processing things.
Yeah, it's interesting because when the day started, it felt like Notre Dame had a realistic chance of earning that 5th seed, which is like the most highly coveted one. As it turns out, the 6th seed, which Penn State got, ended up having the easiest path. But as I was watching that Georgia-Texas game, I was conflicted because I bet on Georgia thinking that they'd win that game, but obviously it would be better for Notre Dame if Texas had won. So once they choked that away, you're like, okay, 5th seed, not an option anymore because Texas is going to get that. And then during that Oregon-Penn State game, it felt like every time when Oregon was about to run away with it, Penn State would answer. Like every single time when it was like, okay, this game is teetering on a blowout, Penn State would go down the field and score. And even in the fourth quarter when they were up by 15 points, Penn State cut it to 8, and it was a legitimate game there at the end. So once Oregon had sealed that win, I was like, there's no way that the committee drops Penn State below Notre Dame because they really care about these conference championship games mattering, which I don't fully understand, but the fact that they made the buys for the conference champions, like it certainly worked out that way. And then I realized, okay, Notre Dame is 7th. I'm doing the math, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, it's going to be IU. And personally, I'm into the matchup because I think that even though Indiana isn't a heavyweight or a traditional power, they talk a lot. Curt Cignetti is certainly taken the world by storm since he took over as the head coach of the Hoosiers. There's a lot of people who are Notre Dame fans who have a lot of IU fans in their life. So I think this is going to be a really fun matchup and one that's really compelling for everyone across college football.
Definitely, and obviously it helps that it will be the only game going on in that window as well, right? So I don't disagree with that. I think for me it was initially just kind of a gut punch of, great, this is going to be really annoying, and maybe in Los Angeles you don't have to deal with quite as many Indiana fans, but there's been a lot of them around these days, and it's not a pretty sight.
It's actually the opposite. Like the vast majority of the guys I hang out with out here are IU alums, one of which is one of my close friends. He went to IU, grew up a Notre Dame football fan, and now he's conflicted. He is that classic IU basketball, Notre Dame football fan. Claims he's rooting for Notre Dame in football, but we're going to have to wait and see. But would you rather have this path for Notre Dame where they have to go up against IU in the first round and then potentially Georgia in the second round, or Penn State, who clearly has an easier path but far less compelling?
It's a good question because I think you're right from an entertainment value standpoint. This is definitely more intriguing, and the opportunity to play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day and ring in 2025 there late at night in the French Quarter, that's pretty cool. And I think having the opportunity to that, you beat Indiana and then you beat Georgia, that would be huge because the last two Georgia games have been tough to swallow just based on how they've ended, where I felt like Notre Dame probably should have won both those games. But at the end of the day, I think you're most interested in winning football games and trying to get to the national championship. And Penn State's path definitely better affords you that. So that's kind of an evasive way of answering that, but I think you know which way I'd rather have. Yeah,
I mean, certainly if Notre Dame had the 6th seed, I wouldn't be complaining playing SMU in the first round, potentially Boise State in the second round, because you're thinking like, man, like, if they don't make it to the semifinals, it'd be really disappointing. But when I look at Indiana and I look at Georgia, those are obviously two difficult challenges, but they're both beatable teams. Not saying that Notre Dame is guaranteed to beat either one of them, but they should be able to win that game, and it comes with a lot of intrigue. And considering the fact that this season, although it's been fun, finishing 11-1, like there haven't been that many awesome moments. Like week 1 was great, going to Texas A&M, winning that game in Kyle Fields, but then ever since that game, there's just been a lack of like excitement for this team, especially from a national perspective. That loss in Northern Illinois has just loomed over the entire season. So I'm looking forward to the chance to play in another big game that everyone is going to be watching and talking about, and then potentially 2 more of those, or maybe 3, if they're able to get by Indiana, because a matchup with Georgia in the second round in New Orleans, like you mentioned, like that is the whole reason why this playoff expanded, is to get games like that.
Totally. Yeah, that's definitely a cool aspect of it. At the end of the day, and like we'll get into this more, I'm not afraid of either of those teams that they're currently lined up to play, but just statistically, and I think on paper, that's probably the better path. And it makes me wonder, just Penn State has gotten an unbelievable amount of breaks throughout this whole thing for doing nothing. Like, are they going to get upset in the first round? Because I kind of think they might.
I don't know. I was pretty disappointed watching SMU against Clemson. Like, there just wasn't a lot there that makes you think, wow, this team is going to be really good. So,
but I mean, their offense can do some stuff, and Penn State couldn't stop anybody the other night. So
that's true. I'm certainly not ruling it out that SMU could win that game, but I think Penn State's defense, although to your point, they really struggled against Oregon, although Oregon and SMU are two different teams. But looking at that matchup, Notre Dame, Indiana on the field, what are some of your early impressions of the Hoosiers?
So I've only watched a handful of Indiana games this year. I watched the whole Ohio State game, I think a little bit of the Michigan game, and then parts of Michigan State and Nebraska. I think their receivers are genuinely good, and they have the ability to provide a test for this Notre Dame secondary, particularly if Notre Dame doesn't get home in their pass rush. I also recognize that they have some talented guys on the defensive line, and their run defense has been stout all year. However, I think that the only time they've seen anything close to what they're going to see with Notre Dame has been when they played Ohio State, and well, we all know what happened there. I think Indiana's well coached. They're going to show up ready to play, but as long as the Irish can generate a pass rush and the offensive line continues to build on its November showing, I like their chances to control the game.
The way I look at it is if both teams play their best, Notre Dame should win by at least a touchdown, probably more. And that's going up against Indiana's best, because I just think that Notre Dame is a deeper, more talented team. But again, Indiana is certainly a good team. And I know that like they might not have the most NFL talent on the field, but whatever they lack in terms of talent, they make up for in discipline and efficiency. Like they absolutely throttled every single team they played with the exception of Ohio State and Michigan. They were just pulverizing teams. They can run the ball. They can stop the run. Whenever you can do that, you're going to present a difficult challenge for whoever you're going up against. So that's the main thing to me. If Notre Dame is able to run the ball on Indiana, like that's a wrap. It's over. But the problem is, not many teams have been able to run on IU, even Ohio State in that win. Ohio State gave up that touchdown early, but then they made some big plays on special teams that gave them that cushion. And then from there, their offense was able to get rolling. Their defense completely shut them down. But I think this is going to be a very difficult game. I do ultimately think Notre Dame will win. I saw the line go up to 8.5, but I think this is going to be a tough 60-minute battle.
Yeah, and speaking of throttling, quick callback to the Western Illinois Leathernecks, as
Shout
I
out.
saw that the Hoosiers beat them 77-3 the week after NIU beat them 54-15. So I know you guys have been waiting to hear updates on them all year, but that's what I found when I looked at Indiana's schedule.
We have not talked enough about the Leathernecks other than at the beginning of the year
Being
when we
the
were like
worst
the worst
team
team
in college
ever.
football. Yeah.
Maybe not even just worst team in college football, worst team ever assembled. Although somehow, I'm looking at it right now, they managed to get
They
wins.
won a couple games.
They did.
Against
Tennessee
some,
Tech.
Yeah. I think, is there like a McKendree win in there too, which is like a NAIA school, I think. I don't even know. But yeah. They won a couple games.
Yeah, who could forget when the Western Illinois Leathernecks beat McKendree 49-32 in early October? And if you're unfamiliar with the Leathernecks, yeah, I remember before the Northern Illinois game, I was looking at it, I was like, who is this team? And then watching Indiana play them, it was shocking how bad they were. It was like watching a college team going up against a JV high school team, just how easy Indiana was able to score. But it's funny, the one common opponent that these two teams have is Purdue. And Indiana beat them 66-0, and Notre Dame beat them 66-7. So I don't really know how much there is to take away from that one. But when you look at that Ohio State game and that Michigan game, do you think that is more representative of what Indiana is? Or do you think that they just kind of had an off night, specifically in that game against Ohio State?
Well, I do think it is probably more representative of who they are, particularly offensively, because they struggled to do a lot in both of those games. However, on the flip side of that, like the rush defense was pretty good in both of those games. Now, Ohio State banged up offensive line at that point. I think down 3 starters, as we saw against Michigan. They struggled again. Michigan had less than 70 yards on the ground, so like that's not nothing. But like outside of those two teams, I don't know who you would say is the best rushing attack they've faced all season. To be fair. It might be Michigan, right?
Probably Michigan. I mean, Ohio State obviously is Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson, but they've struggled to run the ball sometimes.
Yeah.
And you look at that box score, Ohio State only had 115 rushing yards. So it's so odd because going into the season, you looked at that combo and you're thinking that is by far the best running back duo in college football because Trayvon Henderson is already a great back. They add Judkins to the mix. But their struggles in the offensive line have been well established. It's the reason why they lost that game to Michigan, but Michigan wasn't able to run the ball on them either. Now, granted, it's more difficult to run when you have zero semblance of a passing attack at all. But look, the numbers are what they are. They have one of the best rushing defenses in the country. They're in the top 5 in like every single statistical category. That has to count for something no matter who you play.
It does. And I think that it's probably important to level set. Like, I would love for Notre Dame to blow out whoever as much as anybody, but it's the college football playoff. It's supposed to be difficult. And I know that historically the college football playoff would tell you that there are a lot of blowouts and there aren't a ton of close games, but especially in this year where there's been so much parity, I think it's fair to expect a very challenging game. And especially from an Indiana team who has just been dismissed by so many, just for lack of a better term, a-holes out there, just saying 3-loss South Carolina teams should be in instead of them. Like, I think they're going to play with a chip on their shoulder, especially playing Notre Dame in Notre Dame Stadium, and Notre Dame's going to have to answer and punch them back in the mouth as well.
Luke is going to be right back here with us in a second to break down how the cold December weather could provide an advantage for Notre Dame. But before we do, I want to tell you about a great promotion courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can place $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Unfortunately, my pick on Sunday Night Football, I took the Chiefs -4 over the Chargers, did not hit, but we're going to get back on the saddle with a bet for Thursday Night Football. I like the Rams +2.5 against the 49ers. I know that it's a home game for San Francisco, but they just have been a mess, and I really liked what I saw from the Rams in their win over the Bills. So I am taking the Rams +2.5 on Thursday, and for more, just visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What impact do you think the weather will have on this one? Because if Notre Dame had been going up against an SEC team traveling up north, I think it would have had a greater impact, but it doesn't matter who you play. If the high is 30 and there's some precipitation in the air, it's going to affect both teams. But since IU is more used to it than most, I think that they're probably a little bit better suited. But when you look at the actual players on the field and how these teams like to play, if there's any sort of weather, I think that favors Notre Dame.
Yeah, I would agree. It still kind of feels like it's too early to really know what the weather's going to be like. I know they've said some stuff, but like I'm looking even mid next week was originally supposed to be like in the 40s. Now it's looking more 30s. But Tuesday's next week's going to be in the 40s in South Bend. So I really don't know what the weather's going to be like. It was 50 degrees in Chicago today after being bitter cold the last couple of weeks. So if there is weather, I do agree with you. I think it probably favors Notre Dame, but it would just be very classic. And I guess now it doesn't really matter because both teams are from Indiana. But if it was just actually like a beautiful December day and it wasn't very cold, so we'll see.
Luke, I can promise you the weather is going to be miserable. Do you know why?
Why? Because I'll be there?
Because we both will be there. It's an actual lock that it's going to be 30 with like a rain, snow, mist. We should tell the listeners that Luke came out to Los Angeles for a trip here with a couple of other friends. We don't get a whole lot of wind out here in Southern California, but the weekend that Luke Smith showed up, we got a windstorm the likes unknown to anyone this side of the country has ever seen before. And I've never experienced anything like that since. So clearly one of us is bringing the bad luck. The fact that both of us are going to be in that stadium. Whenever I go back to the Midwest, the weather is always bad. Like that Louisville game, the weather kind of sucked for that one. It wasn't as cold, but it was like wet, rainy the whole time. Whenever I go back to like where I grew up in Cleveland, especially in the winter, always it's going to snow. So I am fully preparing for an absolutely miserable weather day. But on the field, you look at what IU likes to do on offense. They're a very precision-based passing game, a lot of timing routes, a lot of back shoulder fades. If there's a bunch of wind and there's some rain or snow, it's going to be very difficult to do what they do best. Meanwhile, Notre Dame has a running quarterback and two of the best running backs in the country. Like, I really do think that is a big advantage for Notre Dame if it ends up happening that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Definitely. And I could see IU struggling offensively, even if the weather is nice. So that's not a bad call at all.
Another thing that I've been noticing lately, I'm not really surprised by this, but after that game against USC, it's the first time where the Notre Dame defense looked vulnerable literally all year. They gave up a bunch of points to the Trojans who, despite their record, have a bunch of talent on offense. Now a lot of fans are concerned that that type of performance is going to carry over into this game.
Right.
And, don't get me wrong, IU definitely has a good offense, but how concerned are you about that matchup, knowing that the last time you saw the Notre Dame defense, they didn't look that great?
So like I said, I do think this could be a test for the secondary potentially, especially if there isn't a pass rush. However, I don't think Notre Dame fans were giving USC's receivers or Jaden Mayava enough credit. I know Christian Gray struggled, but really, a lot of that was the way Notre Dame's defense is structured is your corners are going to be in one-on-ones a lot. And if they're not ready to play, they have the potential to get burned. And while he did get burned, once or twice, some of those were just incredible plays. Like Deuce Robinson made some really good plays. Mekhi Lemon made some really nice plays. Same with Jacoby Lane. I don't think the receivers that Indiana has, and they are good, they're not on the level of those guys, okay? And I think I will take Christian Gray and Leonard Moore over pretty much any receiving core in the country outside of Ohio State.
It's interesting now to think that IU's watching Notre Dame film and thinking we got to target Christian Gray. And all year, I looked at Christian Gray as the next superstar Notre Dame defensive back. And even though he had that one bad game, I'm sure he is itching to get back out there and play some man defense. And I do think Notre Dame is going to play a lot of man. It's going to be really telling how Notre Dame tries to scheme up. They have a bunch of time to prepare for Indiana going up against a veteran quarterback like Rourke. And, IU likes to attack the middle of the field. They like to throw back shoulder fades. They're pretty physical running the ball. But, I just love the idea of Al Golden having 2 weeks to prepare against a team whose offensive coordinator has already accepted the offensive coordinator position at another school. And we're in the midst of the transfer portal right now. I think that's probably going to have some impact on this game. Maybe not to the level of Lane Kiffin when he took that FAU job when he was an assistant at Alabama and Nick Saban just fired his ass during the college football playoff. I don't think it's going to be that extreme, but I think that's a bit of an underrated storyline in the lead up to this game.
It is. And what is the deal there? Does Tino Sunseri actually call plays? Does Signetti call plays? Because in theory, is UCLA really a better job than Indiana?
Not the OC, I would say. I mean, especially with what IU is building. Hold on. Is there some sort of connection with him and UCLA in Southern California?
Not that I know. I just remember back when he was playing about 11 years ago, there was a joke on the beat just calling him the ghost of Tino Sunseri because he was at Pitt. But yeah, that it's kind of wild that he's coaching because I remember him very vividly when he was playing. He's kind of contemporaries with Tommy Rees, I guess. But yeah, that's weird. That's very strange to me. That must be a situation where Signetti calls the plays.
You think he calls the plays in this game? I don't think he does regularly.
No, he doesn't regularly. Okay, well, I don't know then. That's weird. One
other thing that's been a big topic of conversation since the moment this game was announced, the ticket prices. They're astronomical. The get-in price is over $1,000 at this point. I do think that it will go down a little bit as we get closer to the actual game, but this is a very expensive ticket. Meanwhile, according to John Bryce from Football Scoop, Indiana is only allotted 3,500 tickets total, and that includes the marching band. So I think any notion of a red takeover inside Notre Dame Stadium is extremely far-fetched to me. I do think that Indiana fans are going to travel. They're going to be in South Bend, but I don't think they're going to make their way inside of Notre Dame Stadium. How do you think it's going to play out inside the crowd that night?
Yeah, so it's funny, actually. I saw an email yesterday from Indiana to, I guess, alums, just basically encouraging fans to go to the secondary market, saying that the tickets were going to go to parents, players' families and stuff like that because they just didn't have a lot. I think the ticket price thing is a little bit inflated, though, to be honest with you, because as far as I understand it, the lottery results for Notre Dame haven't been released yet. I know season ticket holders were able to buy tickets up front. But the lottery results for alums, that might come out tomorrow if I read that correctly. But as far as I know, that has not come out yet. So I think the reason you're seeing such egregious ticket prices on the secondary market right now is because only several hundred are out there. So I think that that's part of it. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I know that that's the case with the lottery. But as a quick aside, if you are a season ticket holder who put your tickets on the secondary market, what's your problem? And frankly, my take is the university should, on season tickets, institute a right of first refusal for selling them, but that's a whole different conversation.
I don't think many Notre Dame fans are going to sell their tickets because this is so unique. It's a playoff game. It's the first one. You're going up against Indiana, who's not a rival, but it's, they're not located very far. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of Notre Dame fans have plenty of IU people in their lives. So if you are a season ticket holder, isn't this the whole point of getting the season tickets, is that you can go to a game like this? Notre Dame, the university, the athletic department, everyone has basically been planning on this game since August, probably even before that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Indiana, there's no way anyone was thinking about planning for a playoff trip before the season, even the most diehard fans. Now they find out they're going to Notre Dame, but they only have 2 weeks to figure out travel, tickets. It's right around Christmas time, whereas Notre Dame has the benefit of several months to prepare for this. I think Notre Dame is going to have a raucous crowd. It's going to be basically all Notre Dame fans, and it's going to be one hell of an environment. If there's some precipitation, I think that might only add to it, but I personally cannot wait. I think this is going to be unlike any other Notre Dame game you or I have ever been to, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it would be electric for a playoff game, and I don't feel any differently now that the matchup is set. And really, when you look at the night games the last few years, Ohio State, Clemson, USC, those have all been rocking. Why would this one be any different? And to your point, it only might be different in that it's somehow even more enhanced.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Notre Dame does for this game. Stanford Steve from ESPN was saying that game day is going to be there on Friday. I'm not really sure how it's going to work for them because apparently they're going to go Notre Dame on Friday and then go down to Columbus on Saturday for Ohio State, Tennessee. But the fact that Notre Dame gets that Friday game, like personally, I'm pumped as hell for that. I wanted that Friday game. I felt like that'd be awesome to be the first game. Everyone's going to be watching. And then on Saturday, hopefully, we're riding that high of a win and they get to just consume all the other playoff games during that Saturday. How did you feel about getting that Friday matchup?
Yeah, I think it's great too because I would like to watch the other games, and it's nice. It's always hard when you're at Notre Dame games and you can't really watch other games when you're out in the tailgate lot. So I think that all things considered, that worked out pretty well for us.
Yeah, it's impossible to watch other games when you're at a tailgate, especially a night game. Like, you can kind of bounce around, keep up with it on your phone, but the service is pretty bad. And then if you find a tailgate with a television, then that quickly gets pretty crowded and people are just kind of standing in the way. So the ability to actually watch all the games on Saturday. Now, if Notre Dame ends up losing, then I'll be depressed watching them. I'm still going to watch them regardless. But I think this sets up really nicely. Also, I want to get it over with. Like, we have 2 full weeks to think about this game, to talk about this game, to cover every single possible angle. By the end of it, I'm going to be so ready for the game to just kick off. It's going to feel a lot like the Texas A&M game when we were literally talking about that for months. Like, by the end of it, I was like, God, this game cannot get here fast enough.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I wish it was this Saturday instead, but it's not, and we'll have to just pace ourselves here.
Before Luke and I break down how we think the rest of the CFP bracket is going to shake out, I've got to tell you about Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, so as we start to wrap things up here, just not asking you to give picks in every game because we got some time to go, but how do you see this first round shaking out? Not just for Notre Dame, but looking at some of the other first round matchups as well. Do you think it's going to be chalk? Because I'm looking at the spreads. It's a lot of touchdown or more spreads in all of these matchups.
So I was just going to say, I do not like that Tennessee matchup for Ohio State. And Kirk Herbstreit kind of alluded to this yesterday on the selection show, but it might be a bad thing that game is in Columbus, because if that offense struggles early, it could get ugly there. And we talked about Ohio State struggling to run the football this year, banged up offensive line. Tennessee defensive line is pretty darn good. I think that Nico the last few weeks has looked better. I haven't been that high on him all year, but I think I might like Tennessee to win that game.
Is that Ryan Day's job?
If he loses a home playoff game after losing to Michigan, it might be.
I don't see him making out of that. But I didn't even think about that until Kirk said it, and I was like, man, think about what he's saying. It would actually be better for the team to travel to Neyland Stadium, which is one of the most difficult environments to play in all of college football, because the toxicity in their own home stadium could be so overwhelming that it could have a negative impact. So I agree. I think that's going to be a close game. If I were to pick an upset, that would be the one I would take, just given all the pressure that's going to be on Ohio State and how they folded under that same pressure against Michigan. I think Texas hammers Clemson. I think Penn State beats SMU. I could see that game being a little close, but I just don't think SMU's got the goods. And I think Notre Dame is ultimately going to win and cover against Indiana. But after that, I mean, I don't know. It's a crapshoot, because I do think that Oregon is the best team, but they just got the worst draw ever.
They did.
How do you think that side of the bracket is going to shake out?
Well, also quickly, I am not sure actually that Texas has beaten a team as good as Clemson all season long, to be totally honest with you. I think it depends on what you think about Texas A&M, and I could probably hear either side of that coin. I think that's going to be a better game than people think. And also, there's the whole Quinn Ewers Cade Klubnik thing, going back to high school, their rivalry in Austin, like that's not nothing. Cade going back to Austin, that would be very Dabo too, to go down there and he got in and then he just strings a couple along here. So I don't know.
All right, give me your national championship pick.
Oh, national championship pick. I don't know.
Is it too early? You got to watch all the film, break it down.
Yeah, I don't think I can give an informed opinion on that yet. I on that side of the bracket with Oregon, I guess I'll probably say that I do think that they make it out alive there, but it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a challenge.
It is going to be one heck of a challenge for Oregon and every other team in the college football playoff. But Luke, we've got a lot more time to talk about this game. So we'll see you again next Tuesday. And by that point, I'll just be itching for that game to start.
Yep, me and you both.
That is going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. We have plenty of great stuff coming your way each and every weekday leading up to the big game next week. So make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. Also, if you enjoyed the show today, please remember to give this video a like if you are watching along on YouTube, or rate the podcast 5 stars and leave a review on your preferred platform. And I will see you tomorrow.